Hi, my name is Rochelle and you're watching or listening to Box F1 Pod. Welcome to Australia for the first race of the 2025 season. This race was chaos from start to finish. Drivers were dropping like flies. Pretty sure half the race was done under safety car conditions. And in true F1 fashion, more time was spent predicting that it was going to rain than it was actually raining. Due to extenuating circumstances, I will not be cooking today, but I will be making a cocktail on theme with today's events. I call this drink, Is It Raining? Must Be the Water. No More Tears, Tequila Sour. So let's make that before we dive in. First, we are going to get 2 ounces of tequila. I don't know which side of this is 2 ounces. I guess it's 1.5. Okay. And a little more. 2 ounces of tequila, which represents Ferrari seeming smooth on the inside, but when it actually comes down to it, it's pure chaos. The comms this past weekend were some of the worst I've seen from them in a while. Lewis was about to blow a gasket. He clearly is not used to things without Bono. And we all know why they were more chaos and smoothness this weekend, and that's because they shipped their smooth operator to Williams. So that's a tequila. And then we're gonna go in with 3/4 ounce grapefruit juice. And the grapefruit juice is to represent Oscar's bittersweet home race as he fought his way out of the grass and back on track so that he could finish in the points. Bittersweet. And then we go in with some lime juice, because when Carlos got given limes, he made limeade. He was like, I'm not a driver today. I'm going to be a strategist. I'm going to get Alex's best finish yet here. And he did. And next, I'm going to go in with a little bit of honey syrup to represent, you know, the track seemed kind of fine. Was it raining that hard? Not really. And yet, it was the slippiest thing that we've ever seen. Drivers are just flying off over there. So clearly it wasn't that good. And then finally, we're gonna go in with a little bit of sparkling water to represent all that water in Charles's cockpit. You know, when it was wet, it was actually the water. Okay. And then finally, well, I'm supposed to shake, but I don't really, I'm not a shaker. Okay, and then we're gonna take our glass and we are going to line the rim with salt. I've never lined a rim with salt. So this is an adventure for all of us. And the salt represents just how salty, like all the old white guys were. The commentators, Helmut Marko, they were also salty towards the rookies, and I think the rookies deserve better. Well, ta-da! The salt went a little bit worse than expected, but you know, it's fine. And then we're going to pour it in. Oh dear. And ta-da! One. Is it raining? Must be the water. No more tears. Tequila sour. So now that we have our drink that I'm sure you've all made following along, we are going to dive straight into the digital warm-up. Do-do-do. Okay. Cheers. Not bad. Okay. Lap 1, F1 news. So Oscar has been signed for a multi-year contract with McLaren. I wrote with papaya. Oscar has been signed with a multi-year contract with McLaren. His mother was not happy about it. On the announcement, she commented, "You did not mention this at lunch, and I cannot do this for many more years." In other news, Angela Cullen is back. For those of you who do not know, Angela Cullen was Lewis Hamilton's trainer for like a decade, and then randomly moved on to other projects like 2 years ago. And it was very odd because they were just like inseparable. But now that she's back with him at Ferrari, I think this is always my suspicion. I don't know if anyone else has suspected this. Probably. It's not like I'm that original. The suspicion is that she they had her leave so that she wouldn't be bound by any of her Mercedes contract obligations, and so that she could follow him to Ferrari. But that would mean that he had this planned 2 years ago. All right. ESPN is leaving F1 next year, which means if you're in America like me, you will not be able to watch F1 on ESPN. I believe Netflix potentially might be trying to buy the rights to stream it, but who knows? And finally, the new Kick Sauber principal weirdly has not started yet. He will be starting on April 1st. So I don't know who's actually managing things up until now. And also a slight correction in the Meet the Paddock episode I released earlier this week. I said that the team principal for Aston Martin was Mike Crack. He has since been made chief trackside officer, which is a thing, apparently. I don't know what he does, but he is chief trackside officer, and they have brought in a new man to be the team principal named Andy Cowell, which I will admit, not as much fun to say as Mike Crack. All right, lap 2. Preseason stuff that we've missed. I feel like I keep doing preseason stuff that we missed, but there was a lot of stuff. So F1 75, basically this year is the 75th anniversary since F1. Not since Grand Prix, not since motor racing, but since Formula One became Formula One. So they decided to celebrate this by putting on this event at is it called the O? I thought it was called the O, but now that I'm saying it, it sounds incomplete. Also, random note, I met someone out in the wild who said that they listen. Well, I know them, but they said they listened to an episode of my podcast and all they could hear was my dog barking. So I would like to take this moment to apologize for my dog barking, and I do my very best to edit her out. But alas, who am I to silence her? So hopefully it's not too egregious for you. I feel like I've said egregious like 8,000 times recently. Also, speaking about out and about in the wild, I met a friend of a friend of a friend at a party. And she walked up to me and she goes, "Oh my God, are you the baddie with the podcast?" And I was like, I have a podcast. But if a Gen Z girly wants to call me a baddie with a podcast, who am I to tell her she's wrong? So that's officially how I would like to be referred to as. You may all address me only as baddie with a podcast. Anyway, moving on to F1 75. So they help, whether it's called the O, whatever, the giant stadium thing in London. They held like an awards show type thing where like everyone dressed up. There was a red carpet. It was very BAFTAs-esque where they had like the round tables towards the stage, and then there was an audience out in the stands and stuff, but the like teams were all at a table. And everyone was dressed up, all fancy, except for Liam Lawson, who decided that this event called for ripped faded blue jeans and a flannel. Not sure why, but that's the vibe he went for. So he is posing with everyone else wearing suits. Not everyone was necessarily like in a full-on suit. Lewis did come in a tie, but that was for the vibes, rather than him trying to adhere to any formality, because he didn't even wear a tie, I believe, when he was knighted by the Queen. So that was definitely for the vibes. But, you know, Max wore like a nice turtleneck and a blazer type thing. So basically what happened is they did there was like a opening monologue and then banter, and then there were people giving speeches. And then there was a host, Jack Whitehall, who was just roasting everyone and was actually quite funny. I think he might have been the best part of the event. Like his first joke was, he was like, "And now let's all welcome the reigning world champion, the guy who really wants to be here, Max Verstappen." Yeah, you know, some guys are just in it for the racing, not Max. Max giggled, although it looked rather reluctant, but it was quite funny. And then he was like, "Max, look at the bright side. We could have put you next to George, but instead we separated you as far as possible." And then they panned to George, and George is, you know, giggling, and Max is giggling. I think George's was a bit more forced. And then Jack says that George Russell, if he wasn't an F1 driver, looks like he'd be running around with a GoPro talking about trains, which not that far off. Also, he had like a recurring joke the whole time about loving Charles Leclerc, like loving him, having a huge crush on him and how beautiful he was. And they kept panning to Charles, who looked extra beautiful as he blushed. I guess the main part of the evening was all the drivers walking out the long, like, runway thing with their cars and in their race suits. So they all had to get up from their tables, go backstage, change, and then walk out to like some weird choreographed thing in front of everyone. And then they talked about the car. They were asked some questions, and that was pretty much it. It was a bit much. And it was 100% giving like Hunger Games. Like the costumes, the music. Kate Sauber definitely took inspiration from Taylor Swift's Eras Tour for Were You Sent by Someone? Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, where she's like walking down that huge runway with the drums. They had like the whole thing. It was a little weird. It was not them specifically, just the whole scenario was weird. And you know, the drivers hated every second of it. Max was actually asked about it at the press conference at testing. He was like, so what'd you think about it? And he was like, amazing. Can't wait to do it again. Super sarcastically. He might be a bit more vocal than everyone else, but none of the drivers enjoyed any of that. And then this is still pre-season, but before everyone headed to Australia, Ferrari did this whole like big send-off thing in Milan. And it was really, really cool. There was just like thousands of tifosis. They were all singing the national anthem. They did a little interview thing. Charles obviously spoke in Italian, and Lewis was like, Forza Ferrari. I learned Italian. I knew I was coming here for a year and a half. Don't know the anthem. Don't know anything besides Forza Ferrari, but woo, Forza Ferrari. He has no obligation to learn the anthem. I keep thinking about this. Like, I don't know why. I never expected him to know the German anthem when he was at Mercedes. I don't expect anyone to know the anthem really, but I guess like both Charles and Carlos not being Italian, but knowing the Italian national anthem kind of set a precedent. And also I feel like Ferrari and Italy go hand in hand more so than any other team. Like, you know what I mean? Like Ferrari is Italy, whereas the other teams are less nationally oriented. So it just feels like, and then there's a rumor that he's requesting vegan carbonara. Although Fred Vasseur was asked this week in Australia at a press conference how he thinks Lewis, who's only been at a British team and then a German team, how he's adjusting to being in this new environment, new culture, new food, new ways of running things, etc. And Fred was like, I don't think it is very difficult to become accustomed to Italian food after the UK, no? And then just giggled and like looked around like giggling, even though on either side I think we're British people. But very true. All right, moving on to lap 3 in the media. Okay, so in theory this was supposed to be about like everyone, but it somehow ended up being like only Carlos and Lewis. So here we go. Lewis Hamilton was on the cover of Times, and he looked really cool. Honestly, from a brand perspective, Lewis and Ferrari is sick. But he did say quite a bit in the article. I think this was his chance to clap back at some people who have been saying things. Toto Wolff. So one of the quotes that it honestly didn't sound like him in written form, but it was him. He said, "Don't ever compare me to anybody else. I am the first and only black driver that's ever been in this sport. I'm built different. I've been through a lot. I've had my own journey. You can't compare me to another 40-year-old, past or present, Formula One driver in history, because they're nothing like me. I'm hungry, driven, don't have a wife and kids. I'm focused on one thing, and that's my winning. That's my number one priority." Fair enough. Honestly, there was another quote where I was like, is this actually him talking? Because he used the word yapping. But then I heard him say it out loud to Charles. He was actually blaming Charles that he lost chess because Charles kept yapping. So he does use the word yap, but it's really cool. Honestly, the Ferrari Lewis brand collaboration, 10 out of 10. We will still wait to see how the driving thing goes, but I'm sure it'll be great. And honestly, both him and Charles suffered this week, so it has nothing to do, I think, with Lewis specifically. Lewis Hamilton also has a Lululemon deal. He is now brand ambassador for Lululemon. The night before was announced, Lululemon just posted number 44 on their story, and everyone knew what that meant. And then he had like a very dramatic ad with them where he's like running and training, and like it was cool. Love that he's with Lululemon now. I almost exclusively wear Lululemon Sorry, not to be a basic white bitch, but I do love a little Lululemon. So that's really cool. I do think he's not the first F1 driver, because I know Zhou Guanyu was a Lululemon ambassador in China specifically, but he is the first global ambassador, I believe. So, all right. Wrapping up Lewis and Charles did a Peroni commercial together for Italy. It was actually really fun. It was very artistically shot. They were like sitting on top of a beautiful Italian villa and like watching for the delivery truck for the Peroni. That was cute. I'm glad they used them together. Now moving on to Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz was on Stanley Tucci's new show called Dinner Table, sponsored by Allbirds, which is not a shoe that I ever imagined Carlos or Stanley Tucci wearing. But there we are. He was on there with Stanley Tucci, Tan France, and Mel C from the Spice Girls. It was a very interesting group. I loved watching, seeing Tan France and seeing Carlos Sainz interact with all of them was just unexpected. Tan France introduced Carlos to like a crisp sandwich, which Carlos looked revolted by. His bougie was coming out. Him and Stanley Tucci were like, what is this? We are European. We do not subscribe to potato chips in a margarine and white bread sandwich. Stanley Tucci was like, all of that needs to be thrown away immediately. But then the chef there made them it, and Carlos ate his whole piece. So, talks a big game. And also, one of the funnier moments I thought was when one of the questions asked was, "What rule do you like to break?" And Carlos was like, "The speed limit," and everyone laughed. But it's a really interesting concept. Bring completely random people together and like asking prompted questions, and then them just having a conversation over food. I do wish they talked about the food a little bit more, because I don't know what they were eating. The only thing they talked about was a crisp sandwich that honestly was the least interesting thing there, even if it was delicious. Carlos was also in a L'Oreal ad for hair. He was in there with Simone from Bridgerton. They were in a hair commercial together for L'Oreal, and he looked amazing. Finally, someone is giving credit to that beautiful head of hair, even if he definitely didn't get there with L'Oreal products, because we've all seen him post-race. We've all seen him say all he does is shampoo. Maybe the shampoo's L'Oreal, but loved it. I was Ferrari holding him back from all these brand deals, because like what? They just like came out of nowhere, and there's so many. And also him and his father are the new face of Hackett London, which is like peak old money posh, tailored men's clothes. They did like this whole shoot in like the English countryside with like a dog and like the paddle thingy. I don't know what they do with it. Is that like for croquet? No, cricket? For whacking someone? I don't know. He had like the mallet thing. That the dog, it was just really cool, and they just like could not have looked more old money. Not that they don't always look like that, but this like just really amplified it. Love it. Also, Carlos Sainz might dress like, he might not be the most fashionable person on the grid, but his clothes is always impeccably tailored. Every piece of clothes on him, whether it's just a regular t-shirt or jeans or whatever, is tailored perfectly to his body. And that's just peak rich. And I love it. All right. Lap 4, off-duty F1. Okay, so Lewis Hamilton has officially joined TikTok. One of his first videos was, they like edited him into the scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when they drop off the Ferrari with the valet, and he didn't want to like leave his Ferrari, and Lewis was like, "But I'm a professional." And then it just shows him doing a joyride. That was really funny. 10 out of 10 for whoever came up with that idea. And it's going to be interesting to see what Lewis does on TikTok. Fernando has been a lovely treat for an old guy on TikTok. I'm not sure Lewis will have quite the same energy that Fernando has, but we'll see. Also, Australia has been very excited about Oscar and his home race. Poor Jack Doohan's getting like no attention, but Oscar got like his own burger at some famous burger chain. His face apparently is like literally all over Melbourne. His sister posted a funny video being like, literally anywhere I go, his face is just there. Like I cannot escape it. Speaking of Oscar, again, his mother took him to a Pilates class. And if you don't know the lore with Nicole Piastri and Pilates, every time Oscar is doing well in a race, she'll tweet, guess I have to cancel my 7 a.m. Pilates class again. She does not look like she's canceled a single Pilates class, let me tell you. She is jacked in the best way possible. Oscar was asked how it went, and he said that he did not take beginners, which apparently was the rumor beforehand. He took an intermediate class. He also said he went with a bunch of couples. His mom posted a picture of them all together, so I'm not really sure. Maybe it was his mom and also a bunch of couples. I don't know. He said that the girls did significantly better than the boys. And he was like, I really thought I was in pretty good shape as an F1 driver, and not when it comes to Pilates. I've honestly heard some of Biles say the same thing. So I don't know what muscles Pilates is strengthening that other athletes just don't have. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Honestly, I think athletes could probably use Pilates. But it's nice to know that I might be stronger than Oscar in certain things. It's also weird that it was hard for him though, because like their neck thing that they do is very Pilates adjacent. Pretty sure there's a Pilates equipment thing that does similar stuff. Not that he did that in the class, but like I would think it would require certain of the same muscles since core is so important in F1. Anyway, moving on. Last thing in this lap. One of the funniest things I've seen, Lily, Alex Albon's girlfriend, read him chapter 48 from the latest Fourth Wing book. I'm not gonna really, it's about dragons. Chapter 48 was not about dragons. It was about 2 dragon riders. I shall not be elaborating. She decided to read chapter 48, which is specifically about a relation between 2 dragon riders, to Alex Albon, who progressively got more and more uncomfortable as the chapter went on. He started just like looking at the camera, then he put his hood on, then the hood like progressively got lower and lower and lower until he just like could not look at Lily anymore. And that's pretty much how chapter 48 went. And it was one of the peak funniest moments I have seen from them. So if you know Fourth Wing, you'll get why that's funny. It's linked in the show notes. All right. Lap 5, trackside in Melbourne. So I think last episode I said they had replaced the class photo with that weird stylized photo shoot on the blank canvas with the tires, and they all looked really uncomfortable and didn't want to be there. Turns out that was just in addition. So I was wrong. It was in addition to the class photo because apparently we need multiple photo shoots with them. So they lined them up on the track with the little chairs and the little sign, and I guess they lined them up in constructor's order, but unfortunately that meant that Yuki went in the back, and for some reason they just had to put him behind George Russell. So you can't really see Yuki in the photo. He was asked about it later and he was like, yeah, I'm used to it. Good luck to whoever has to Photoshop me to be visible. Cause like, I think it's literally just George and then Yuki being like, hello. Poor Yuki. I feel like he gets so much shit for no reason. Also, in the first pre-race press conferences of the season, someone was very committed to the drama because they decided to pair Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, and Kimi Antonelli together for a press conference, just those 3. So it's the guy who was kicked out, the guy who replaced him, and the guy who replaced the replacement all together. It was actually very wholesome. I honestly think Carlos has more than a right to hold a grudge, even if it's not anyone's fault. But I guess he knows that, so he's not holding a grudge. But he could if he wanted to. Yeah. Also, everyone seems to love Kimi. Everyone's always looking at him so affectionately. There was a hilarious video of him during the driver's parade talking to Max. And he got grabbed and taken away mid-conversation. And Max was so aghast. He literally did a 360 turn on the spot, looking like around, like, where did he go? As if it was like a magic trick. And he was like, where did Kimi go? he was aghast. It was so funny. But speaking of rookies, so there was a clip that Kick Sauber posted of Nico and Gabriel chatting, and they had so much banter. Gabriel was giving Nico so much shit for being old. Nico was trying to give it back, but I don't think he could hold a candle to Gabriel. Gabriel is sassy. Is that how I'm supposed to say his name? Because Gabriel sounds weird. I don't know why. It's Gabriel, right? Okay. Gabrielle? I don't know. And then there was the rookies round table where poor Laura Winter had to interview. So, okay, quick aside. I was assuming that Liam is considered a rookie, but he did technically have a whole half season under his belt at Red Bull Racing. No, wait, not Red Bull Racing. What are they called? The Racing Bulls? Whatever. AlphaTauri. So this is technically not his first season, but in my brain, he's a rookie. And I feel kind of sad for him because he doesn't really fit in with the other drivers because he was only there for a bit. But he's not being grouped with the rookies either. So he's just kind of floating about. But they did a rookies roundtable with everyone but Liam. So it was Gabrielle, Kimi, Isaac, Ollie, and Jack Doohan. So 5. And it was so chaotic. Poor Laura Winters did not know what to do with herself. She could not get them to all calm down. It was pure Gen Z energy and just it was really funny. One of my favorite moments though was they were asked who will have the best radios, and Jack Doohan said it was definitely going to be Isaac because he then he imitated one of Isaac's famous radios. Now I know it's famous. I didn't know about it before, but it's one of his crashes last year. And on the radio, he goes, no, I destroyed the car. And it was this aggressively French accent. And Jack did such a good imitation of it. It was so funny. But I'm so excited for this new energy that the youngsters are going to bring. It's fun. It's chaotic. They've got so much energy that I don't think anyone, even the younger, I guess there's never been so many at once since Alex, Lando, and George, but even they were a bit more subdued. They are just pure chaos all the time, and they're so funny. It's literally running around yapping nonstop. There was a clip of Mercedes promo that it was George, Kimi, and Valtteri, and just watching Valtteri and George exist around Kimi is so funny. Valtteri just looks confused by this child, and George just looks exasperated like a dad. He's again? I need to stop calling Kimi a kid, but he's just so young and cute. He just seems like the sweetest thing. So love them all. When I say kid, it's not supposed to be offensive, but compared to me, they are kids. I have no evidence of this, but I'm pretty sure Charles taught Lewis how to play chess. And if he didn't teach him, he certainly made it a main activity in his life. I have I'm almost certain Lewis never played chess on regular before. But now he's always playing chess with Charles. There was a video of them playing together at F175 at their table. Ferrari posted a video of them playing chess together. I do not think Lewis is on Charles's level. In fact, I'm pretty sure the video they posted, Charles beat him in 30 seconds. And that's when Lewis blamed him for yapping too much and distracting him. I don't think their games are quite matches. What do you call chess? The thing that you do with chess. Me criticizing Lewis as if last time I played chess, I was 7. But anyway, I'm not sure they're quite as evenly matched as Charles and Carlos were. I think they were both pretty advanced, but it's cute that he's getting Lewis to play chess with him. Chess with Charles. I'm also really enjoying the relationship between Alex and Carlos, both professionally and also their personalities. I really think they complement each other really well, I think, as teammates, because they're both super analytical and super smart and strategic. So I think the way they drive and the way they prepare is very similar, and I think they build off of each other. but also their personalities. They're both nice guys. They're both funny. They're both kind of chill. I think it's going to be a great partnership. And I'm kind of starting to think it's Carlos, because he had a great relationship with Lando and at McLaren. He had a great relationship with Charles at Ferrari. And now it seems like he's going to have a pretty, has he had a bad partnership? Is he just like Jesus? I'm trying to think of someone in pop culture or history or anything that was just like really good at partnerships, but nothing's coming to mind. So anyway, I really think it might be Carlos. In other news, per tradition, Oscar's grandmother made lamingtons for the entire McLaren garage, which is very cute. And I remember the first time she did that, there was a note that was clearly handwritten that said lamingtons from Oscar's grandma. And then the sign has progressively gotten more and more, it's clearly moved from Oscar's grandma, scribbling a note, to the marketing team that are picking the font and beautifully printing grandma's lamingtons. But it's so wholesome that she does this every year. She doesn't there doesn't seem like there's that many, but I feel like there's a lot of personnel. Who gets these lamingtons? And finally, I didn't see any. Honestly, I thought I saw a video of Daniel Ricciardo there, but then I saw no other evidence of him being there. I saw a video of him trying to sign Charles Leclerc's shirt while Charles was doing autographs, and Charles at first tried to swat it away, and then he realized it was Daniel, and they hugged and said hi. But now I'm starting to think that might have been from a different year, because I see literally zero other proof that Daniel was ever there. I know he had a Enchante pop-up in Melbourne the same weekend as the race, but I still can't find any evidence that he was actually there, so I don't know if I made it up. But maybe Daniel was there, maybe he wasn't. It's a mystery. Unless anyone knows the answer, in which case it's not a mystery. It's a mystery to me. All right. And with that, we conclude the digital warm-up. On to analysis. All right, moving on to analysis. So before we chat about the race, let's do a quick overview of quali. We had some incredible performances, including from Yuki, who finished in P5, which I believe was his best performance in Melbourne, and I think he matched the team's best performance. He, however, credits it to an iced latte he had before quali. So let's all be more like Yuki. Have an iced latte, finish P5. Both Williams made it into Q3, which was very exciting. And I believe that was also the team's best performance in Melbourne in a decade. To have both cars in Q3, very good. And Lando got pole position, and he actually beat Oscar to pole by an eighth of a second, which is crazy. Oscar was so close to getting pole in his home race. All right, so the starting grid is as follows: Lando, Oscar, Max, George, Yuki, Alex, Charles, Lewis, Pierre, Carlos, Isaac, Fernando, Lance, Jack Doohan, Gabriel, Kimi, Nico, Liam Lawson, who will start from the pit lane because they modified the car under park firm conditions, followed by Ocon, and finally Ollie Bierman, who failed to set a lap time in qualifying, and he will also start from the pit lane because he also had his car modified in park firm conditions. So the race, it is actually called the Louis Vuitton Australian Grand Prix, and their logo for this was great. They made it like it was gold and it was in movement. So where you could see the track, it tracked its movements. It was sort of spread out. I don't know how to describe it. Whatever. Look it up. I don't know how to explain it, but it was cool. And I did during this podium, they had their slogan up for it, and it was "Victory Travels in Louis Vuitton." Very good, because I think actually the trunks that carry the trophies are Louis Vuitton. So it's true. And also just the race, just an overall statement on the race, I don't actually understand what was going on the entire time. It was those banana peels from Mario Kart were just littered across the track, but no one could see them. So you would accidentally slip on it and crash and crash and burn, not burn, crash and get out of the race. I need to come up with a better term for that. Everyone just kept slipping. No one could tell why. No one could stop it. First, they're like, it's a like really basic mistake that they're making, and that's why it's happening. And then it was like, they have no control of the car. Now, there was a lot of theories up until Carlos also was out for the same reason. Everyone was like, rookies. And then they're like, oh, seasoned people are also doing it. And then the most seasoned got out because of it. And then they're like, maybe it's not a rookie thing. Maybe. We shouldn't be blaming the rookies. I'm not talking about the general public watching. I'm specifically talking about the commentators who were kind of hard on the rookies regarding how they performed here. And also, obviously, Helmut Marko was an asshole, but we'll get to it. That was like a very unnecessary ramble before I talked about anything. So during the formation lap, Isaac Hadjar slipped on one of those invisible Mario Kart banana peels and ended up in the wall. And at first, this is where Brundle was like, that's just like a really small mistake, and that's just like a mistake that he's going to be kicking himself for. And then later he was like, there was nothing he can do to control the car. And I'm like, is it he made the mistake, and then once he had made the mistake, he was just a passenger and there was nothing he could do to save the car? Or once you slip a little bit, doesn't matter. Like, is it a mistake? Is it an act? Like, what is causing it? Because from what I understand, it's when they leave the dry line. I think one of them just like kind of got a wheel on the white line and ended up in the wall. So I'm not entirely sure what is causing them all to slip, other than it's the conditions making the track super slippery and unpredictable, and like putting your part of a wheel on a part of the track that would normally be fine in these conditions, you're screwed, basically, is what I'm understanding. But I got ahead of myself once again. Isaac was the first one to experience this, and it was heartbreaking. He crashed in the formation lap. He did not take his helmet off. He was very obviously crying. The camera would not stop showing us him. Like, they watched him stand by the car. They followed him as he walked off the track. They followed him as he walked all the way down the paddock. Like, was that necessary? We get it. He was crying. He was upset. He was warranted to be crying because his first race didn't even make it to the first lap. He had qualified the best out of all of the rookies. Like, all his whole life building up to this moment, and this happens. So him crying makes sense. I cried. It wasn't even my moment. But the one benefit, I guess, of the cameras being there and like forcing us to watch this was we saw Anthony Hamilton, Lewis's father, run out as he's making his way down the paddock to his garage or to his hospitality. Run out, and like Isaac actually like walked right into him because I don't think he could see because he was like just bent down, still in his helmet, crying. And Anthony just started saying stuff to him and like obviously trying to comfort him in like this very rough moment, which I think was really nice for him to do. He didn't have to do that, but he's obviously lived through rough rookie moments. He knows what it's like. Obviously, Isaac's parents were there, but like they might not be as seasoned in being a parent of an F1 driver as Anthony Hamilton is. And Isaac really loves Lewis Hamilton. It's like his number one like idol. So I think it meant a lot to Isaac, and it was like a really sweet thing for Anthony to do. I also think that like, I hope that Isaac was in a state of mind to like take in what he was saying, because I think he was so distraught and so distracted, like wearing a helmet, trying to walk, ignoring the cameras that are like stalking him, that it might not have resonated necessarily, but it was a very sweet moment and like so great of Anthony Hamilton, and a direct opposite to what freaking Helmut Marko said, who said it's kind of embarrassing that he'd be crying that much. Like, that is your driver, sir. Like, please support him. I don't know. Like, They also showed Stefan Domenicali leaving, the F1 president, leaving the Racing Bulls, I hate that name, the Racing Bulls hospitality after talking to Isaac. And I'm actually quite impressed with the support that he is receiving and like the mental health support that big people in the organization are giving him. Like, that's really nice of Stefan to do that. Brendel started laughing and he's like, wow, it's a new world now. The old generation would never give you a hug. And Karate was like, yeah. Like, what? Why? Like, that's a good thing. That's a good thing that it's not the old generation anymore and that we're not all Helmut Markos and watching rookies cry when something out of their control takes their biggest moment away from them. We should be hugging them. Like, yeah, I believe that Flavio would never give someone a hug when something outside of their control fucked up their first race in F1. I believe that. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe that's not something we should be striving for. They were really pissing me off today, all the commentators. Like, everything they were saying was just kind of rude and unnecessary. And like, I don't know. I was not vibing with them today. All right, moving on to the actual start, because it was an aborted start. It was like nothing happened, so they just lined back up and started again like 10 minutes later. Yeah, because they never even made it. They just didn't redo the formation lap. They just went straight into the start. Lando did have a bit of a shaky start, but he stayed ahead. Max went a bit cray-cray, overtakes Oscar into second. So there he goes, trudging along. In lap 1, before we even finish lap 1, Jack Doohan hits the wall, crashes pretty bad, and they issue a safety car. Basically the exact same scenario as Isaac. He like accelerated gently and then it was slippery. I don't know. They kept trying to explain what was going on. And all I know is like an invisible force basically just dragged everyone into the wall because it was a little damp. Those cars are fragile. Those cars are sensitive and fragile. And like what I've gathered is it wasn't their fault. Any of these people's fault. I do feel really bad for Jack Doohan because Flavio might kill him. Flavio terrifies me and he's looking for an excuse to get rid of Jack Doohan. And this, like, he doesn't care that it's not Jack's fault. He'll get rid of him anyway. And then under safety car conditions, Carlos crashes. He's like, the torque went crazy in my car. And like, but it was also the exact same situation. And once Carlos crashed, by the way, this is when Brundle was like, there's nothing any of these drivers could have done to save their car. But before this, it was a mistake. And perhaps it was also a mistake on Carlos's fault, but I don't really see how Carlos Sainz made a mistake under safety car conditions and crashed into the wall unless it was like something he couldn't control. As soon as the safety car came out, everyone started pitting for inters, and now it's lap 4, basically, still under safety car conditions, and we've had like 2 pit stops already. And as per usual, no one can agree what the weather is going to be. They can't even agree on what it is now. They're like, it is class 1 rain, and then someone else will be like, it is class 3 rain. And it's never either of those. Class 1, by the way, we found out, is a light drizzle. No one wants a class 5, basically. I think that's a torrential downpour. I think that's basically Spa. But I just love that every time we have wet weather conditions, what is this radar? Because like no one can read it and everyone seems to have a different radar. So I'm like not fully understanding the weather situation. If I ever get a chance to talk to anyone on an F1 team, my first question is going to be like, please explain this weather radar situation, why no one can read it. No one. Okay, so mid-race, this is when we really started to see the deterioration of Ferrari communications. So many times, both Charles and Lewis were like, can you just leave me to it? They'd be giving like very specific information to them and they'd be like, can you just not tell me this right now? I'm like busy. And Lewis was getting very snappy. Like, he surely knew the rumors and has seen proof of what Ferrari communication is like, but he clearly wasn't ready to experience it himself because he was aggravated. He was so annoyed. He was like, please stop talking to me. And then like when they would say stuff, he's like, why would you say that? That's stupid. The changing of the strategy mid-race, like he was unprepared for that. He's definitely going to do whatever he can to get Bono. In lap 17, so not that far into the race, Oscar ends up overtaking Max into second. Max ends up in a giant puddle. Why is there a giant puddle on track? Surely they have some sort of draining situation where they cannot have giant puddles on track. And then at about lap 30, Oscar is chasing down Lando, and he's very close. And they're pretty evenly matched. And as he's like getting within, I think within DRS of Lando, he gets told to hold position, and he says, "I'm faster, but okay." And then, like 5 minutes later, less than 5 minutes, honestly, Zach is on TV with the commentators, and they're like, "So how long is Oscar gonna have to hold position?" And Zach's like, "Time to go racing." And then in lap 34, we had our second safety car. Fernando Alonso crashed. And this is the point where everyone was like, maybe it's not a rookie situation. 43-year-old Fernando Alonso crashed with hundreds of years of experience in an F1 car. Perhaps something else is afoot. So then everyone once again comes into the pit. Also, so this is a bit weird. So there was a lorry. There was a truck on track to help clear Fernando's car. And I also was under the impression that there was not supposed to be any like recovery vehicles on track while the cars are on track. Someone's like, shouldn't there be a red flag? After the race, George, Max, and Lando all said that it wasn't dangerous and they were fine. People were saying they shouldn't have said that because of Jules Bianchi, et cetera, et cetera. Feel like the drivers know when it's dangerous and when it's not. The situation with Jules, and then the situation that we personally had in Japan these drivers had in Japan, I think it was a couple years ago, isn't really comparable to what it was today. The conditions were weird, but at the same time, I get what everyone's saying. Like, people keep slipping on invisible banana peels and ending up in the wall. What's to say they wouldn't slip on an invisible banana peel and end up in the crane? Nothing. So I believe they shouldn't have had the cars on track at the same time as the crane and like the recovery vehicles were on track. But they didn't issue a red flag, and the driver said it was fine, so who knows? Lando, during this time, gets told that there might be one lap of Class 2 or Class 3 rain, and he goes, "Well, that's not good. Are you sure it's just one lap?" And his engineer goes, "No, not really," which is super reassuring. And then Lando says, "I would like to box before it rains and not while it's raining," which also, strange request from Lando. That seems quite difficult to predict, since they can't even predict if it's going to rain while it's raining. So I don't know what he was expecting. And then I believe as we're leaving safety car conditions, it's beginning to rain. Just as it begins to rain, both Lando and Oscar enter the rain portion of the track at the same time, but like in different angles, which caused them to go off track and into the gravel. Lando less badly than Oscar, given, I guess, where Oscar was in relation to Lando. They both get back on track. They both retain position. And then immediately Oscar goes off into the grass and there's a yellow flag. And he is there forever. It feels like forever. It was so long that the graphic read Oscar has DNF'd. He is no longer participating in this race. But he was still trying. He was still trying to get his car to go. And it was sad. And like inspired, like if this was a movie, there would be like inspirational music playing as he's like trying to get his car to reverse in the grass back on track. And he did it because he didn't want to DNF in his home race. He wanted to finish. And yes, it fucked his entire like race. Like he could have podiumed. He could have been second or even potentially first. But because of this, he was like at the back of the pack. He did end up finishing in the points, which was an incredible feat, but he was heartbroken, and you could see he was super heartbroken. But the way everyone cheered when he finally reversed out of the grass and onto the track, tears, sports movie moment. So good. And then finally, with less than 10 laps after the race, we got a next safety car. Gabriel seems to crash into the wall, and then Liam crashed into the wall. And at first I thought that they somehow crashed into each other, but I don't think they did. I think they had the exact same situation as everyone else. So that's two more rookies, well, one rookie and like a half rookie out of the race. We had yet another safety car, and now only Ollie Bierman and Kim Antonelli are the last rookies standing, basically. And then in the end, we had like 2 more laps where we finally got some racy racing as Max like really tried to catch up to Lando. And this is, again, another moment from the commentators where Brendel was like, classic Max, isn't it? Really trying to send it in the last few laps. Like, what is he going to do? Slow down? Duh, he's going to send it. So he really gave Lando a run for his money in the last couple of laps. But Lando won, followed by Max, and then George came in third somehow, some way. Weird race. That's how things ended up panning out, because no one, even George, I think, knew how he ended up in that position. And I just have to give huge kudos to Lando, because I've never seen him so calm, cool, and collected throughout a race, especially when he's leading. That usually like fucks with his brain and he like can't keep control of the situation. But he stayed calm and chill, and like he kept that lead the whole race. So good job, Lando. A couple of highlights that were unrelated to the progression of the race. Charles's radio was probably like top 10 funniest things I've ever heard. He gets on the radio, by the way, sounding more French than ever before, like heavy French accent today. He goes, "Is there a leakage?" I'm just going to do it in an American accent. "Is there a leakage?" And his engineer goes, "A leakage of what?" Literally enunciating every syllable. "A leakage of what?" And Charles goes, "I have the seat full of water. Like, it's full of water." And his engineer goes, "Must be the water." And Charles goes, "Wow, let's add that to the list of words of wisdom." So funny. Everyone's been quoting it ever since. Someone even wrote a song about it that I saw on TikTok the other day, that I actually listened to the whole thing, and I'm like, wow, this really aligns with what Charles went through this weekend. And then I realized the song was created about that scenario and not just matched. Carlos, even though he crashed in first lap, got to be a strategist for a day. And he sat on the pit wall the whole time. When he saw that second bout of rain coming for that like 1 lap, he immediately ran and told them that they need to put Alex on inters, which they did. They listened to him, and that is one of the reasons that Alex finished where he did. He finished P5. Kimi had a penalty that put him, he finished P4, but he got put into P5, which put Alex into P4. However, Mercedes clearly presented a very strong case with evidence, and the FIA rescinded the penalty, which put Kimi back into 4th and Alex into 5th. But regardless, Alex really deserved it, had a great finish and really deserved it. And it was just so cute how Alex, James Vowles, and Carlos were all like, "Ooh, Carlos was a strategist today, and he was integral to our like success, blah, blah, blah." And they were all so excited about it. And Carlos was like, I'm just so happy that despite not being able to help the team on track, I could help them off track. And it was just very wholesome. But Carlos, 1,000,000%, and I've said this for several years now, Carlos will be team principal one day. His strategic brain will like lead a team to victory, 100%. Also, you know, we love superstitions and theories around here. A random trend that has been discovered for the Australian Grand Prix specifically. Charles won in 2022, but DNF'd in 2023. Max won in 2023, but DNF'd in 2024. Carlos won in 2024, but DNF'd in 2025. Will Lando DNF next year? I fully believe curses are real. I fully believe that these theories have merit. So we'll just have to wait till 2026 and see what happens. All right, so post-race, the cool-down room was a bit awkward. I'm not gonna lie. George and Max in a room together. And I feel like Max usually likes to just like dive into race analysis. But like today, I feel like it was almost also a coping mechanism for the awkwardness between them. Lando was just like kind of in the middle, like, oh, like everyone's fighting, so I'm just here. Also, podium, important note, Moet, I don't know how to pronounce it. The champagne company, the actual champagne, is back on the podium and is supplying the alcohol that we spray on the podium, and it's real champagne. So goodbye, sparkling wine. We don't need you. So that's exciting. And it's like been iconic. It's an iconic like F1 brand. Like there's pictures of Senna with a Moet bottle, and I don't know how to say it. I should have Googled this before. I also absolutely love that Kimi came out to watch George's podium. it's very cute that he came out to support George. I don't think I see that very often. The other driver coming out to the podium when someone's on the podium. But he did. And during the post-race press conference, Max and George were asked if things are better between them now, since they were like sitting with each other in the press conference. It's mandatory. And Max picks up the mic and deadpans, "No, things are shockingly terrible." And then he goes, "Yeah, we're fine." Not particularly convincingly. They clearly have not had a conversation. And Max has been saying for a while, he's like, whatever, water under the bridge. And George was the one who's like, blah, 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 blah. I will not stand down to this bully. But here he went, 3-minute silence after Max spoke. And then George goes, "Yep, what he said." For the record, I do believe that Max doesn't give a fuck. I do not believe that George doesn't give a fuck. He gives at least a couple of fucks. All right, results. Dick in the box. I think the cameraman who followed Isaac Hajar from the track all the way to Racing Bull Hospitality is a dick. In the box, out of the box, in the paddock, out of the paddock, just a dick. I also think that Charles's race engineer who told him that the water he feels filling up his seat must be water, kind of a dick. Driver of the day was officially Lando, obviously for leading a race in such complex conditions. Would I go as far as the commentators to say that it's one of the best drives in the history of Formula One? No, I would say it was a pretty good drive. It was a great drive. And I would say it's one of the best drives in Lando's history, given that I've never seen him so chill all the way through a race, leading so calmly and confidently. For him, this was a great race. Would I say it's one of the best of all time? No, that's a bit dramatic. I would also like to shout out Oscar Piastri for his sheer guts and determination to get out of that patch of grass and back into the race. If this was Hogwarts, Dumbledore would be giving him 50 points to Gryffindor, and he'd be winning the House Cup right now. Just the determination just blows me away. Kimi Antonelli, I think, also deserves a shout out for being the last rookie standing, or second to last rookie standing, and also the best performing rookie. Again, not saying that the mistakes that the other rookies suffered from were because they were rookies or that they were mistakes. Their fates in this race were, I think, irrelevant to the fact that they are rookies. However, it's still very impressive that even seasoned drivers got fucked up by the track. Kimi was able to hold his own. King of the wet track, honestly. His first race was a wet track and he finished 4th. Amazing. And I would also like to shout out a driver of the day outside of the car. Carlos Sainz, strategist of the day, immediately went to the pit wall and made sure that Alex could bring home 5th. And everyone attributed that to Carlos Sainz's brain. He's bringing that big brain energy to Williams, and I love it. And Ferrari will rue the day. I saw a rather funny video of someone waiting where the drivers were driving into the track before the race, and someone was holding a sign saying, "Has Ferrari sent you the miss you text yet?" And you could see both Rebecca, Carlos's girlfriend, and Carlos in the car laughing. And as Carlos drives by this girl, he rolls down the window and he goes, "Not yet." All right, results. And before I say the results, I would like to note that we no longer are tracking the fastest lap for literally no reason. The FIA just decided that we are no longer counting the fastest lap, so no point for that. All right. Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Alex Albon, Lance Stroll, Nico Hülkenberg, Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, and Ollie Bierman. And then our DNFs are Liam Lawson, Gabriel, Fernando, Carlos, Jack Doohan, and Isaac. The standings for the Drivers' Championship is basically the results of the race. That's the driver's standing right now. And also, side note, since Lando won this race, he's now leading the Drivers' Championship, and this is the first time in just over 1,000 days that Max has not led the Drivers' Championship. 1,000 days is crazy. And finally, the constructor standings are McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, Williams, Aston Martin, Kick Sauber, Ferrari, Alpine, Racing Bulls, and Haas. So that's it for the Australian Grand Prix. Short and sweet. Next week, we're headed to China in literally just a few days. I will be cooking for China. The problem is I can't decide what because I want to make about 50 things. So if anyone has a suggestion for what to make for the Chinese Grand Prix, hit me up. I'm currently mulling over about 10 dishes for realsies. So we'll see what I end up doing. Hopefully I don't get overwhelmed and not make anything. That's not going to happen. But if you have any ideas of what I should make, hit me up. And as usual, subscribe, share with any potential boxes, and make sure you follow on social to keep up in between races. Until this weekend, box.